Welcome to Tell Me Your Story. This is the Real Impact Daily Inspiration series with Dennis Henson, and we are talking about the various stories within this wonderful book that he has put together that has stories, it has poems, it has quotes, it has at least two. There's actually a third book list, but it's not official. It's part of the Abraham Lincoln story, and you will be able to read, because you'll be able to find these books, I'm sure. At the end of that story, there's that book list that Abraham Lincoln would read, had read, I should say, during his lifetime. So there's a lot of great information, great inspiration. Dennis, welcome back. It's great to have you with us.
Thank you, Richard. I really appreciate you having me.
And I tell you, this particular story is unique, especially in the context of one of the books that you'll be bringing out here sometime in the near future, having to do with real miracles. It's still part of the Real Impact series, but it's going to be stories that are going to be focusing on miracles. And I'm excited about when that comes out. But right now, let's take a listen to a story that most people remember going back quite a number of decades. So here you go, folks.
Do you believe in miracles? In 1980, a hand-picked group of college hockey players battled their way to the Olympic semifinals in Lake Placid. That young team experienced its share of struggles leading up to those games. Their coach, Herb Brooks, passed over some of the nation's finest college hockey players to pick these youngsters. They were selected because of their character, psychological makeup, and how well they played their positions. Brooks's selection process included a 300-question test that gave him insight into how each player would react under stress. Anyone refusing the test was eliminated from consideration. His screening process was so unpopular with the U.S. Olympic Committee that it almost cost him his position. But Brooks stood firm, the committee relented, and he remained as the coach. Brooks knew endurance was the key to recent Olympic victories, so he initiated a rigorous conditioning program constantly pushing the young players to their physical limits. If a player complained, he was dropped from the team. Still, after a time, even his own assistants questioned his techniques, yet Brooks persisted. The United States had experienced a rough patch in the years leading up to these games. A severe recession had drained most Americans' bank accounts, and having to wait in long gas lines had demoralized the rest. It was a low time for the country. A Soviet invasion of Afghanistan led the American president to think of boycotting these Olympic Games, but at the last minute, he decided to allow the athletes to participate despite the tensions. If America's teams could only win a few medals, it might help break through the darkness and give Americans something to cheer about. However, no one anticipated a medal in hockey, not that year. The seventh-seeded Americans were assumed the least likely of all the nations to medal. Yet the young lineup surprised everyone by making it through the opening rounds undefeated. So a faint glimmer of hope flickered in the breasts of some of the American fans. But few believed that these kids had any chance at all. Nearing the end of the games, the U.S. team was scheduled to meet the Soviet team, which hadn't lost a game in 12 years. Everyone assumed the Russians would give the upstart Americans a hockey lesson. Even though the U.S. had managed 4 victories and a tie leading to this game, they were not considered a match for Russia. The Soviet team had won 4 consecutive gold medals. They were led by legendary players Boris Mikhailov, team captain Vladislav Tetryak, the best goaltender in the world by general consensus, and the speedy Valery Kharlamov. Every Russian player was experienced and talented. On the other hand, the American team's players' average age was only 21, making them the youngest hockey team in U.S. Olympic history. Of the 20 players on the roster, Buzz Schneider was the only one returning from the previous Olympics. The other players only had college experience. 9 had played under Brooks at the University of Minnesota, 4, including goaltender Jim Craig, and U.S. team captain Mike Urizzoni, played against him in an NCAA championship series. To make matters worse, 3 days before the defining games, the Soviets soundly defeated the U.S. in an exhibition match. And they hadn't just defeated them, They had humiliated them by a score of 10-3. In an Olympic-level competition, scoring 10 goals was almost unheard of, so the American fans were hoping to at least see a less embarrassing showing. Coach Brooks didn't seem concerned by the low expectations and told his youngsters to ignore the doubters. Those Russians are people just like us. We can beat them, and we will beat them if we only play our game. In the locker room before the match, Brooks insisted, we could play these guys 10 times, and they'd probably win 9 of them. But not tonight. This is our night. The Russian and American teams were natural rivals due to the decades-long Cold War between the two countries. Consequently, the Olympic arena was packed mostly with Americans, but Russia had a respectable following. Before the match, the home fans waved United States flags and sang patriotic songs. In the locker room, Coach Brooks, honestly believing his team would win, read them a statement. You were born to be a player, and you were meant to be here. This is your moment. It's going to happen. The Soviets had a reputation for dominating in the final period, so to save energy, Brooks instructed his players to limit their shifts to 40 seconds or less. Then he asked the team doctor to track the ice time for each player. With heads held high, the young Americans entered the ice to face the Russian juggernaut in a David versus Goliath duel. Once play began, it didn't take long for the Soviets to score. Although seconds later, a 50-foot blast from Buzz Schneider found its way to the net, sparking some hope in the hearts of the U.S. fans, and a few chants of USA were heard from the stands. But that hope was dashed when the Russians immediately took back the lead. With his team down, U.S. goalie Jim Craig narrowed his focus and turned away a myriad of Soviet shots. Then, in the waning moments of the first period, Dave Christian fired a laser from 100 feet. And though the Russian goalie saved the shot, he misplayed the rebound. With a loose puck bouncing on the ice, Mark Johnson slipped between the two Soviet defenders and fired it past a diving Tretiak. That tied the match, with just 1 second remaining on the clock. Then something remarkable took place. Because the Americans tied the score, Coach Tininov stunned his team by sending in his backup goalie, Mishkin, to replace Tretiak. Brooks immediately took advantage of the move, telling his players, "You just sat down the greatest goaltender in the world." 2 minutes into the second, the Soviets scored a third goal. Mishkin shut down the Americans' offense, and Russia dominated, outshooting the U.S. 12-2. At the end of the second, the Russians led 3-2. Beginning of the third. The third period started as a defensive battle, with both teams successfully defending their goal. Near the middle of the period, a Russian was called for high sticking and sent to the penalty box. This gave the Americans, who had managed only 2 shots in the last 27 minutes, a rare power play opportunity. Late in the penalty, after 2 misses, as Dave Silk advanced into the Soviet zone, he was knocked to the ice, causing the puck to bounce to Johnson. Mark turned and blasted a winner under Mishkin, tying the game. 2 shifts later, Pavlik slid a pass to an undefended Urizoni, who fired the puck past Mishkin and into the net, giving the U.S. a 4-3 lead with 10 minutes remaining on the clock. When the Americans took the lead, their fans went nuts, for lack of a better term. Their cheers were deafening, and the bleachers swayed as the screaming home fans jumped for joy, screaming, "USA! USA! USA!" The Soviets, trailing for the first time, attacked ferociously, and moments later found an opening. Their puck streamed toward the net, but ricocheted off the right post. The Russian fans looked at each other with puzzled expressions. This isn't supposed to happen. These are only children. Nevertheless, they were not too concerned, for their team consisted of hardened professionals, and 10 minutes is an eternity, especially in the third period. The Soviets had dominated in that period for many years. Why should this game be any different? They knew their champions would soon show these kids who they were playing with, though these kids were not the pushovers that everyone thought. Time after time, the Russians attacked the goal, and each time Jim Craig turned away their puck. Then the Soviets stepped it up, fighting harder and skating faster, yet the Americans matched them stride for stride. With the lead and less than 10 minutes remaining, everyone expected the Americans to go to defense. Yet to the contrary, they staged an offensive attack. They upped their intensity, and play was fast and furious as each team chased the puck from one end of the ice to the other. Minutes passed like hours, and as time melted away, Coach Brooks repeated to the young Americans, "Play your game! Play your game!" By the 5-minute mark, the Soviets looked bewildered. In panic mode, they shot wildly at the net. Yet Craig was unflappable, calmly turning away everything they threw at him. With under 2 minutes remaining, the Russians advanced into the American zone and found an opening. A powerful blast sailed toward the U.S. net, but veered just wide. At the 60-second mark, the world expected the Soviets to pull their goalie to add an extra offensive player. But they did not. They'd never needed to pull their goalie before, so they hadn't practiced it. An eerie silence fell over the crowd as the final seconds ticked away. Both Soviets and Americans held their collective breaths. Every eye in the stadium was fixed on the speeding puck. A TV commentator asked, "Is this really happening? Can these boys hold on against those giants?" With 33 seconds, Craig kicked away a Soviet slap shot, and although the Russians quickly regained control, a U.S. charge freed the puck. At 12 seconds, amid a mad scramble, Johnson gained control and passed to Ken Morrow. With 7 seconds remaining, Ken advanced the puck over the blue line. Then, thundering from the bleachers, came the countdown: 6, 5, 4. Even the sportscasters picked up on the count: 3, 2, 1. As the buzzer sounded, ABC's baffled commentator Al Michaels spoke these now famous words: "Do you believe in miracles?" As his team ran all over the ice in celebration, Brooks headed back to the locker room, where he was soon joined by the young Americans. Still joyous, the players spontaneously broke into a chorus of "God Bless America." Brooks's prophecy was realized. It was their night. These U.S. men had indeed achieved a miracle. During the TV broadcast wrap-up, ABC's Olympic anchor Jim McKay compared the American victory over the Soviets to a Canadian college football team defeating the Super Bowl champion Pittsburgh Steelers. Days later, the Americans defeated Finland to claim Olympic gold for their country. The totally unexpected David versus Goliath win was the boost the country needed. It was the spark that ignited a new era of American pride and success. But what about that exhibition game days earlier, when the Americans were humiliated 10-3? It was just that, an exhibition. It showed the Russians they had nothing to worry about from the upstart Americans. Was Herb Brooks that smart? Maybe not. But those humiliated upstarts didn't lose again throughout those Olympic Games. This is your moment. You're meant to be here. Herb Brooks. The book you don't read won't help. Jim Rohn. We become what we think about most of the time, and that's the strangest secret. Earl Nightingale.
Absolutely incredible. I mean, and this story, I've got tears in my eyes, and a lump in my throat, and at the same time, excitement as I'm hearing the play being described by the narrator here in this story. And he, first of all, he did a great job. The narrator did a fantastic job, held me all the way through. But what really touched me, and I want to talk about this when we get back, was the connectedness of all of the players on the American side, saying, look, win or lose, we're going to play as a team. And then their coach, play your game, play your game. And we'll talk about that here as we continue on the Real Impact series here on Tell Me Your Story. I'm Richard Dugan along with Dennis Henson, and we just heard the story of the Americans defeating the Russians in the Olympics in 1980, if I remember hearing correctly. And they, of course, went on to win gold, which was fantastic. But that story, and I'm sure that it's up on YouTube somewhere where you can watch the whole game or that last period or what have you. And
Yes.
feel that excitement, feel that connectedness. And it seems to me, and I've seen this in other sports, where a team will, for example, I think it was the New England Patriots. They still hold the record for the comeback, like 28 points. They came back from 28 down to win the Super Bowl that particular year. And this is along those same lines of, and it sounds kind of strange, Dennis, for you and I. We're sitting here going, "Oh yeah, we did it, we did it." No, you and I, we didn't do anything, but we did cheer them on, and that seems to make that seems to be a part of this dynamic with teams like the U.S. hockey team in 1980, where the stands were filled with Americans who were cheering them on. And I have a feeling that, along with their coach telling them, play your game in that third period, I think that probably made all the difference in the world for them to defeat the Russians.
Well, that was a time where feelings between the two nations were at a very high level.
Yeah.
We'd been in Cold War for many, many years, and Russia was the enemy, and we had gone through nuclear threats and crisis. I mean, the emotions were really high, and no one expected the United States. I mean, really, they were ranked at the bottom of the teams that made it. No one expected them to medal at all. And for those kids to come out and defeat a team that hadn't lost in 12 years, they'd won gold medal after gold medal after gold medal. And our kids were amateurs.
Mm-hmm.
Their players were paid. They were professionals, and we were amateurs. And for those just college kids to go out there and beat those men,
yeah,
it was unbelievable. It was literally a miracle. I remember it wasn't shown when it happened. It happened like over here in the United States. It was in the middle of the night, so you didn't get to see it. And they tried to keep it quiet until we were actually able to see it on TV the next day. But it was an amazing event, and it really did. That was the turning point, because America was really at a low, having heroes. Gas prices were through the roof. Gas lines, you couldn't get gas. I lived in Valdosta. I remember you didn't even try. You just stayed at home, because if you tried to get into a gas line, you were going to be there all day long. So what's the point?
Yeah.
just stay home. And the morale of the nation was at the lowest ebb I can remember. And then, because China had done something really stupid, Jimmy Carter said, "Okay, we're just not going to go. I mean, it's going to be there. We're just not going to, we're not going to let our kids play your kids." Well, at the last minute, Carter said, the Olympic Committee said, "Look, these kids have worked so hard. It's not fair to punish them because of some political stuff." And Carter relented and said, "Okay," at the last minute.
Mm-hmm.
So this hockey team didn't even know for sure they were going to get to play in the Olympics, but they continued to practice. And I sincerely believe that Herb Brooks tricked the Russians by letting them beat them 10-3 and making them think, "Oh, there's nothing to worry about here. We just go out there and do what we did."
Yeah.
Brooks was smart. I mean, he was a brilliant coach, and the way he picked the kids, he did not pick the best players in the United States. That wasn't his, his goal was not, this is the best player, the best hockey player in the nation. That didn't get him in. They had to be really, really good at their position, and they had to be really, really smart and have a one of these attitudes where we're teammates, we're all one thing.
Mm-hmm.
And And he put that together. I don't think any other coach could have pulled that off. I mean, Herb Brooks was the right person at the right time. And he had played, or he had been on a hockey team in the United States, but he got cut at the last minute.
Mm.
So he had a burning desire to go in and win for lots of different reasons.
Mm-hmm.
And he fought the Olympic Committee all the way through. They didn't agree with anything he did. I mean, they just tried to get rid of him from the time they picked him. But he made it through, and now it's history, and it's a very, very powerful story. And even more so if you were alive at that time and can remember the tension between Russia and the United States.
Well, I was only in my 20s, so I wasn't quite as observant as I might be today, but still, I do remember watching that and what technically was a replay here in the United States. And just, and I remember hearing, and of course, I've I've of course watched that segment in some sports recaps, historical events in sports history and so forth, and including a book series that I was able to interview the author of called And the Crowd Went Wild. It was a combination picture book and CD, and it had all of these audio recordings of all of these different events that took place, that have taken place down through recorded history. And when I say recorded, I do mean literally that's been recorded, either audio or the video, the film, and so on and so forth. And you can't help but get excited. You can't help. And I want to talk about the phrase that he used. Do you believe in miracles? When we get back, as we continue here with the Real Impact, the daily inspiration series with Dennis Henson and yours truly, Richard Dugan, here on Tell Me Your Story. The miracle aspect of our conversation today is kind of what I want to focus on right now, Dennis. Al Michaels makes the statement right as the buzzer is going, saying, "Do you believe in miracles?" And I have to put this to you more as a question than a statement. Don't you think that that's kind of where we need to come from? Not so much asking the question, but answering that question. Ask it and then answer it in the affirmative in terms of your life. If the person listening or watching wants to do something more than they're doing, they want to achieve something more, they know, as we've used the phrase many times, they know what they want, and they're not quite at the space where they know what they need to do. All right, it's still in the early stages, so that's okay. But they need to ask themselves the question and then answer it. Do you believe in miracles? Yes, I believe in miracles. And I'll throw one more thing in there. When Jesus was talking to his disciples and they were seeing the miracles that he was performing, they said, "Could you teach us how to do all of that stuff?" And of course, I paraphrase. He said, this is nothing. Sure, I can teach you how to do this, but you are going to do greater miracles than that. And I'll tell you what that greater miracle I believe is the transformation of one's life. Do you believe in miracles? Yes, I do. And I want to transform my life. That's the miracle I want. Share with us from your perspective.
Richard, when I received those 3 books from the company, when I started in the business world, Think and Grow Rich, Success, the Glenn Bland Method, and The Greatest Salesman in the World, my life had changed from the time I opened the book and to the time that I finished the last chapter of the 3rd book. I was a different person. And that's what Real Impact, that's one of the books named Real Impact. It shows you that miracles are real in real life, and you can have miracles in your life too. That's one of the powers of the book. That's why it's so important that we get it into as many hands as possible, because miracles happen every day. You don't hear about all of them, most of the stories in this book, you'd heard of the people, but you hadn't heard of the miracles. I mean, you heard of Lincoln, but did you know that it took 20 miracles for him to become president? I mean, you've heard of Arnold Schwarzenegger, but did you realize that it was a miracle that he became a movie star?
Yeah.
As a kid, his crazy dream, he wanted to become a movie star. You know, he would tell people that they would just laugh at him. And story after story after story in the book kind of shows you it's not impossible. These people did it. They're people that lived, and you know they did because you know the name Hershey, you know Mary Kay, and they're just normal people. But they had this thing, which Napoleon Hill talked about. They focused on one single purpose, and they had a burning desire to get there. That's just like, have you ever taken two wires that were electrically charged and touched them together and sparks just that's what happens.
Yeah.
Definiteness of purpose and a burning desire. When you put those together, sparks fly, and the entire universe is open up to you for your miracles to happen. But it sounds like I'm preaching. I'm not. It's just laws of nature. It's just simply true laws of nature. But how do you find them? Because that book I haven't finished the book yet. There is some books named Laws of Nature, but they're not the kind of book that I'm talking about.
No, I understand. Absolutely. It seems to me that the other aspect of this too is, I mean, we can watch things like the American hockey team 1980 Olympics, and we can hear what Al Michael, or turn the sound down for that matter, and you watch the Americans win, and you can say, now that was a miracle. A lot of people, though, they like to have a little bit more definition as to, well, what is a miracle? How do I know when a miracle really happens, as opposed to just, well, that was supposed to happen, well, that tree was dead and it fell down, but it didn't hit the house. Oh, that's not a miracle. That's just, I know that a lot of people have a lot of problems, have trouble with, they're challenged by that word, miracle. And I would love for us to get beyond that, to go beyond that, to just an understanding that, hey, they do happen. You don't have to define them. Do you kind of see it that way too, that you don't really have to have a definition? You know that you know. Is there something inside, in your gut, if you will, or your intuition that tells you, oh, that was a miracle. That was cool.
What makes things seem like miracles is the odds were all stacked so much in the other direction. It just didn't look possible. There's no way this can happen. It's simply impossible. Then it happens. And people say, that was a miracle. And who knows? Maybe it was. Maybe it was intended to happen that way, but things like that happen all the time. And I tell you what, they'll happen a lot more often if you believe that they're going to happen, because faith is the third thing. It's very, very positive, definiteness of purpose, a burning desire, and faith. Henry Ford said, if a fellow believes he can do a thing, he's probably right. If a fellow believes he can't do a thing, he's probably right. So faith is really, really powerful. And then, of course, will and action. You have to have the will, or you won't get back up when you get knocked down. Yeah. And of course, if you don't take action, everything else, Mendino said in The Greatest Salesman, your dreams are just dust. Your plans don't amount to anything. Without action, everything is worthless. You have to be willing to take action. But if you have definite purpose and a burning desire, taking action's easy. I mean, it really is, because that's what you want. You want it so bad you can taste it. You can smell it. You can feel it. You can breathe it when you get up every morning. So taking action is just a logical next step.
Yeah, it's amazing. It truly is. And it's exciting as well. And we can all experience that if we would just allow ourselves. And I'll tell you what, you can experience those feelings we've been talking about. Get yourself a copy of Real Impact, a daily inspiration. Go to realimpactbook.com. You're going to click on that link down at the bottom of the page called Podcast Attendees. And then you're going to have an opportunity to receive 3 gifts, free gifts. Well, 2 of them are free. The other one's 50% off. And that's if you would like to purchase your own copy of the deluxe edition of Real Impact. And then, of course, you can get a free copy of the ebook. That's at the top of the page or near the top of the page there, where you can put your email address in there and they'll send you a link to get yourself a copy of Real Impact, the ebook. And then, of course, the third gift, priceless, is having access to, when they're released, being notified and getting information on the releases of volumes 2 and 3 of Real Impact, as well as a couple of other books, 3 other books actually, that he's talked about here on the program. And we hope that you will do that as we continue here on Tell Me Your Story, the Real Impact Edition. I'm Richard Dugan. Dennis Henson is with me, and we are talking about the work that he has put together. Great inspirational book. We just listened at the front end of the program to the story of the U.S. Hockey team in 1980 Olympics defeating the Russians in the second to last round, and of course the U.S. went on to win gold. And I got to tell you, Dennis, there are people that I've had on the program. They will be talking away, and they'll say, "Oh, I've got goosebumps. I've got goosebumps." Well, I don't necessarily get goosebumps, but what I get is this welling up inside. Sometimes I'll get a little moisture in the eyes, kind of thing, and a lump in my throat. But it's all it's excitement. I'm energized by the repeating of the story, and that's one of the things that I think is so cool, is that if we're having a not so great day, grab the book, any story, and read it to, I have to put it this way, to re-energize yourself. And that's kind of what we're talking about here, isn't it?
It is. Yeah, charge your battery.
Charge your battery.
So when I started the book, I had over 100 stories, which was too many. And I had the difficult decision of deciding, well, which stories am I going to keep and which ones am I going to take out of the book? So I appeased myself by saying, well, I'll do a 2 and a 3, and I'll have a place to put these other stories. So the threshold was this: is the story cathartic? Is it going to make tears come to your eyes? Is it going to make you swell up? And all of them bring tears to my eyes. When you were playing that, I don't know if you could see, but I had to wipe my eyes a couple of times because it's just so powerful. Now, Richard, I've heard that story. I mean, I wrote the story and edited it and formatted it and looked at it, probably 1,000 times, and I still get tears running down my face when I hear it. And that's just the one story, but they all do that to me, because if they didn't get put in the book. So that's something to look forward to if you're listening to this and you like to be touched, like I do. If you have a story like that, send it to me. I want to read it, because that's the kind of thing I really enjoy.
Yeah, and there is something cathartic about rereading a story over and over again, or a series of these inspirational stories. And again, I know that you will acknowledge this, whether it's in Real Impact, a daily inspiration, which we certainly would encourage people to get their copy of, or any place else that you find inspirational stories, and you read them, and they re-energize you. They get you back on track to say, "Hey, I'm missing something. I gotta figure this out so that I can get back to the business of doing the thing that I'm here to do, living my life's purpose." And by the way, I even heard this about that one's life purpose could change hundreds, if not thousands, of times throughout our lifetime. And it's only because we're moving forward, we're doing stuff. It's like what you were talking about before, when you were given that opportunity, with all of the, a free ride, as it were, as far as going into music and leading a band and so forth. And you said, no, I'm going to go this other direction into business because something told you that's the direction that you should go. And now here you are. You're an author. You're rather prolific, in my opinion, because even though I know you have this particular item, you've got the others already churning around in your brain, in your mind, getting ready in your imagination to put it down. I want to say down on paper, and then make it available to the rest of us. And I kind of feel the same way with my book. And I would encourage people to get your book, Real Impact: Daily Inspiration, and read it. It's I tell you, sometimes I will ask a guest to define, what's your process? But the reality is, you know what your process is, and it's working because you are touching the lives of a lot of people, and we thank you for that.
Well, thank you for the kind things that you say. I appreciate those very much.
Yeah. And I will tell you, folks, that when you read this book, and I do get moved by each of these stories in different ways as I move forward in my days and weeks and so forth. And it makes a difference. And that's something too that, Dennis, we could talk about as well. But before we go any further, I would love for you to just share, and we'll probably play this audio once again somewhere down the road here. I think it's important, but give us a little bit of the story of, on the cover you have what looks like a brass oil lamp, the typical lamp of Aladdin and the lamp, if you will. And it's a great story. So can you? Like I said, we'll play the audio on another program, but share with us the story of this image that you chose to put on the cover.
The reason I put that on the cover is because this book is like that lamp. It's a very similar amulet. The story of Aladdin is a young man purchased or came into possession of an old lamp and was cleaning it. And when he rubbed it, he realized it had magic powers. And so when he rubbed it, the genie came out and he said, "Your wish is my command. Whatever you want, you can have." I think he gave him 3 wishes. And well, if you've heard that story, you probably thought it's a story. It doesn't have anything to do with reality. But if you thought that, you were mistaken, because the genie made him decide what he wanted, which is really the first step in getting your wish.
Mm-hmm.
If you don't know what you want, then how can you get it?
Yeah.
So this book shows you how the book can become like Aladdin's lamp. It is the amulet that if you take it and you use the formula, the magic formula in the book, you can have pretty much anything that you desire. And it shows you step by step how to get there. Well, that's an amazing thing to have. So I would suggest that you would go to realimpactbook.com. The very first link says The Mystery of the Lamp. So click on that, and then there's an audio there. It's been played. We played it on this series before.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Listen to that audio, and it really, really explains how this works.
Yeah, I would certainly encourage folks to go there. Again, it's realimpactbook.com. And scroll down. Don't scroll down. If you want to hear that piece of audio there on the left side, there's the link giving you the story of the lamp. Or scroll to the bottom. Click on the link that says podcast attendee, and then you will have an opportunity to partake of 3 gifts that Dennis has made available to you. And when we come back, I want you to go over the special program that you have available to people who can get involved in disseminating this book, sharing this book, spreading the word about this book, and getting it in the hands of people to help and inspire them to do what I like to put it this way, to do greater works in their lives than they're already doing now. And it's a really exciting opportunity. And we will continue to do that here on Tell Me Your Story, the Real Impact series. I'm Richard Dugan with Dennis Henson, author of the Real Impact Daily Inspiration book. I hope you'll get yourself a copy. It's in 4 different formats, and that's very cool. Hardcover, paperback, Kindle or ebook, and audio, the Audible version. I have 2 of those 4, and I might make it. Actually, I stand corrected. I actually do have 3 of the 4, and I may get that 4th edition, that deluxe edition, as we go. But before we wrap things up, I want you to share with us in a couple of minutes this special program that we have referred to a number of times, but it's worth repeating a number of times, how people can get involved in not only just spreading the word, but spreading the book.
When people go to realimpactbook.com, if they look on the left-hand side and to the bottom on the first page, it says special of the month. It's in a different color, and every month we do something to make it easy to get a good price on the book. Right above that special, it says help the children. And it's a link that takes you to a GoFundMe page.
Mm-hmm.
And you can donate $1 or $5 or 10. It's not a monthly thing. It's just one time, just put something in. And every penny that goes into that GoFundMe account is used to purchase books to give to the less fortunate, to communities that are struggling, to schools, schools that have don't have the budget to purchase good books for their library. And there's a lot of those. I mean, I was in the business of calling on schools before, and I know a lot of them don't have the budget to do the things they need to do. And libraries in disadvantaged communities, nursing homes, senior centers, we're going to be passing these books out. All of the money that comes in, all of it, it's not like if you give to a charity and 10% of it actually gets to somewhere and 90% of it goes to administration. None of this goes to administration. It goes to purchase the books, to give to children, to help with child literacy, to help with continuing education, and to help people in nursing homes enjoy the last days of their lives. These stories mean a lot to them because they know these people. Yeah. I mean, they were alive during the Andrews Sisters and Walt Disney. They remember watching them on TV when they were kids. So I think it's a really, really good thing to do. And of course, it's a charity, tax deduction, but it'll make you feel good to help other people. I promise it will.
And especially if you have your copy and you've read it and you know what's between those covers, if you will, hey, why not? I mean, there are a lot of different books that will be shared with family and friends over the years. They'll come across maybe even those 3 books that were given to you, and I'm sure you at times would say, hey, here's a copy of this, or here's a copy of that one. Well, now you've got something that I think is really, it's just great. I will tell you too, Dennis, and we have programs coming up where we're going to take a look at some of the poetry in your book and some of the quotes. We'll have some of those quotes, and we'll read those and talk about them as we move forward, inspiring quotes from all kinds of people, including you. There are quotes in there that you have put your moniker to. So we're excited about that. And we look forward to that series of programs that are all part of the Real Impact series. And that'll be a lot of fun. And I thank you again for being with us here on the program and sharing your insights, your observations, and your feelings about Real Impact that I honestly do believe is making a real impact in the lives of people. If it's not through this program, it's through them going to realimpactbook.com and getting their own copy. And so we thank you for that and the legacy you are leaving behind.
Well, I appreciate your kind words, Richard. And this is a lot of fun. I enjoy this series.
And I do as well. I want to thank you folks for listening to and watching Tell Me Your Story. It's a new paradigms for a new world. We're giving you choices and knowledge of those choices to help make your dreams come true. And as a reminder, we are here on Sundays at 7 a.m. and 7 p.m., Monday mornings at 1 a.m., Wednesdays at 9 a.m., and then Monday through Friday at 8 a.m. with of course, the special Real Impact series on Wednesdays at 8 a.m. And again, that's 9 different programs, 9 different guests that you can listen to, and I hope are inspired by. And we encourage you to go to listen to those online as well. Go to richarddugan.com and click the listen live link, and you'll be able to hear it at those times. Or you can do it on demand by going to podcasts locations such as SoundCloud, iTunes, TuneIn Radio, Spotify, Stitcher, Player FM, Blueberry, iHeartRadio, Amazon Music. We're on YouTube where you can watch these conversations, and they will be posted, I promise you. And we also ask that if you'd like to subscribe, we would appreciate that, so that you can then click notification. And when a new edition of the Real Impact series is posted, or any of the other 8 programs, you'll be notified. And then we ask that, you do take some time, not only to get Real Impact, but also maybe you can go to Amazon and get Choices, 5 Steps for Life. That's my book, and it's available in 3 formats. The 4th one, I'm still trying to figure out how to get it up there, and we'll figure that out and get it up to you so that Audible is available as well. We also ask that if you can support the work we're doing here financially, we would be gratefully appreciated. We have a PayPal account. It's there for your security as well as ours. And on the homepage at richarddugan.com, there's a link to Amazon and the book Choices, as well as a link to the PayPal account where you can support us if you'd like to, if you can. We also ask that you take time to go within during this decade of perfect vision and listening to that still small voice in that quiet, peaceful, calm place that is yours and yours alone. I guarantee you that's a good thing. And that's where I think Volume 3, Dennis, will come in handy, because I honestly do believe strongly in listening to that still small voice. With all that being said, we're going to wrap it up here. Thank you so much for listening and watching. And until our next broadcast, podcast, videocast, love Talal. Jeanette, I am still listening. Dad, continue to be happy, because I am. Smokey, I'll see you on the other side. Mike, thanks for letting me be in your life. And to my dear friend Zorro, aho, aho.